Hi, everyone. I'd like to officially welcome you to Information and Knowledge Context on the Go. My name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's event with Matt Caton.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We've got an exciting presentation today with a couple of surprises and really just a lot of different options for how you can get content into your brain. So we're going to be covering a lot of ground today. It's going to be a great webinar.
All right, great. Well, I'm going to get started. Before we jump into, various features, I want to talk to you a little bit about your overall strategy for information on the go. There's a wide variety of even technology options with your brain software, as far as whether you're on the mobile client, whether you're on disconnected mode in the plane. So what we're all experiencing today is the proliferation of information as well as mobility. Nowadays, most people aren't necessarily sitting at a desk or at the office for 8 hours a day. You might be on the field doing an inspection of some machinery, or mostly in the air where you don't even have an internet mode, or maybe you're at home with your new baby and you just have a mobile phone in one hand to get your information in. So there's all kinds of possibilities, and of course you can be sitting at your desk as well. We're going to cover all those possibilities and how you can do that with the brain. So one of the advantages of the brain is the ability to create a meaningful context for your information. So one of the things that's great about the brain is that it's not just like getting a, syncing, let's say, a bunch of URLs or documents in Dropbox. Yes, you can have all your information in a folder structure, but it will be very difficult for you to understand the bigger picture on your knowledge. So what we really are talking about is creating that meaningful context so that when you come back to a piece of information, you don't have to rethink why it was there or what it means, especially if you're getting into team sharing and collaboration. It all makes sense based on how everything's connected. So a couple of things for information. First of all, for your information on the go, you want an information strategy. So this is kind of a preview of everything we're going to cover today. So first of all, we're going to talk a lot about data importing and capture. So with the brain, you can think of it as a remote control to all your information. So you can have basically a mapping of the information visualized in the way that might match your business processes or make sense to you. I have a lot of business users, for instance, that have Microsoft SharePoint, then they have 3 different intranet sites. Somebody created a new wiki, and then you've got your shared folder drive, and then some stuff shared online. So they're constantly juggling different information sources. Well, with the brain, that can sort of be your single source, your one place to go ahead and find all that information, and that can actually help. You can even package that for team members as well. So the audience of the brain the brain can serve you, provide that additional context for you, but can also work well for your team members, or I know business managers that actually provide executive briefings in the brain and then publish those online or sync those to the cloud so that the executives are just kind of logging in and looking at them online, or your sales team as well. So there's lots of possibilities there. So the key aspect of your information strategy is, of course, adding the data, but you want to add it in a way that makes sense to your business processes, your way of thinking. And that's where meaningful categories, or what we like to call the brain structure, the thoughts, the parent-child-jump relationships come into play. So creating those categories that make sense for you. And then in creating those categories, you can also do things like visualize steps in a implementation plan, in a project plan. So your structure doesn't necessarily have to be a taxonomy, scientific taxonomy of the way information is created. It can be something very interesting, like we have a lot of business analysts and real estate companies that use the brain to visualize their deal flow process. So you can also think about thoughts in that way, where the information itself tells a story. But we are talking about information on the go. So before we get into specific features and examples, I want to talk a little bit about what we call the modality of usage. And what that means is where are you using this information and what's the best way to get to it. And just a little bit, especially for new users, about our software, because a lot of people are surprised that we have both client software that you install on your laptop, and it can literally function as a disconnected offline knowledge base. So basically, when you install the Brain desktop client, you, of course, it'll work wonderful with the internet and you can sync your Brain online. But the beauty of that is, unlike a lot of, say, online only knowledge mapping software solutions or things like that, if I'm on the road, if I don't have an internet, if I'm flying a lot, I can use the client, and then we can do what we call plug and chug data feed, where when I actually do get back to my hotel room and have that internet connection, or I land, I can synchronize all my changes, or they'll automatically sync to the cloud. So this is a particularly powerful mode that I do want users to be aware of. And in terms of our customer base, just to give you an example of who would be using just the client software disconnected mode and then maybe syncing to our server or their TheBrain server, we have field service representatives, people who are, whether they're troubleshooting airplane or looking at crop protection in the field, literally in the field. Field service reps would be one user. Foreign service, take that Brain and use it to create a mission, and maybe you don't know where you're landing, what kind of internet connection. Frequent flyers, and of course this applies to everyone. When you're on the plane, you don't have to stop working. You can continue working on your Brain. And by the way, this can be done with the desktop client. We also have offline mode for mobile as well, although people tend to use disconnected mode mostly on their laptop, though that's not essential. And of course, we have military applications as well. So just to give you a sense of where the disconnected mode can help you or your team out, that's something to consider. And then of course, we have online mode. And this is for all platforms. And the other end of the spectrum is, I forgot my laptop and I'm on site at a client. What do I do? Well, no worries. For instance, let's say I just spilt juice on my machine. I'm in the middle of presenting information on the go. Well, here I am. I've actually just launched my online version. This is coming through the Brain cloud of my section now, and I can go into, well, I'm actually not in disconnected mode, so but you can see that all my Brain that's published here, this is a URL on app.thebrain.com. So you don't necessarily need, your Brain does not need to be tied to a specific device as well. So this is an example of when you might actually want to use online, and it's also great for teachers who are publishing Brains. If they actually, the students don't necessarily can't download client software or whatever, they can simply publish their Brain online, and I can just come in here and, this Brain right now is set to private, but if I want to share it, I can send people web links, and I might publish it later for everyone, and you can see that this is the online version. So that's another way of doing it. And of course, just syncing with all devices. I think the most common use of the Brain is when we're using the client software, the web, to not back up our data as well as access it online. And then of course, I might sync, I have a PC in the office, I have a Mac at home, I have an iPad, I have an iPhone. It can sync across all your devices. So making sure that Brain is readily accessible. So when I have that next great idea, it's right there. I can make that capture. So that's just a little bit about the context, just to make sure everyone's on the same page as far as the framework. Now what I want to do is I actually going to go and I'm going to grab a Brain, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we can create that context for adding information. So let me just go to the top of this Brain just to give everyone a quick overview. And then we'll kind of move into specific information categorization structures. So for those of you that are new to the Brain, pieces of information in the Brain are what we call thoughts. And a thought can represent any type of digital information. So when I click on a thought, it's going to trigger all related pieces of information. So I've just clicked on my business, and this is where you can do different business mapping. So below in this section here, I've got an area for clients, for engineering, for marketing operations. I've also got links to team members. So if I want to put information maybe that Catherine sent me under Catherine, I can go ahead and do that. Or if I just drag and drop a document on our Asia expansion, she might be heading that. I can go ahead and nest my information in its more meaningful environment. So let's just go back to marketing. And in this particular brain, I also have an area for key projects. So I have a section in my brain called active projects. Now, a lot of people will simply like to drag and drop or create context based on project as well. So I've got an area for all my team meetings here, where I've got everything that we've done from old board meetings to very new product design meetings that we're doing as well. I can actually come in and take notes to add new ideas, so it's very easy. So if I want to go ahead and add to a new meeting or create a new meeting, let's say that we're having our new 2018 October sales meeting. I can just come in here and I can actually go ahead and type this right away. So I actually want to type this as a meeting. So I'm just going to go down and select meeting and then hit OK. And now I've got this piece of information in my brain on my meeting. And this might be just a placeholder where I'm going to be dragging and dropping a lot of information that I need for this meeting. So in this meeting, we're actually going to be covering a little bit on our new marketing plan. So I've got a document here on my desktop. So all I'm going to do is simply drag and drop this into my brain. And now I've got that document available for me, accessible on my business plan. And of course, I can change the name or add notes. The other thing we might be covering is a little bit on our business plan. So I'm going to drag and drop that document. So you can see how easy it is to start importing and adding information in your brain. And of course, I might also want to have some thoughts on what we're going to cover. So we're going to cover new sales territories, sales strategy for Gen Z. So let's say we're marketing a new website and we're targeting the youth market. So this might be a key area for me. So the other thing that I can do is use the brain to not only aggregate documents, but also my online content. So a couple things. I'm actually just going to go to options and do a web search on my active thought. So I'm just going to go ahead and search the web for interesting articles on this. And so there's an article here, Generation Z marketing strategies. That looks pretty interesting. It's a blog entry. And so now that I've found a piece of information, I can do a couple things. All I have to do is drag and drop this. And now I can drag and drop this on the active thought if I actually want it to appear on that thought, or if I want to create a new category specifically for this article, which I do in this case, I'll go ahead and drag and drop that. So it's very easy to integrate existing information. I'm actually going to just go ahead and shorten my search to Gen Z. And I'm going to go to news and see if there's any interesting news articles. Let's see. Let me go back here. And there is a very interesting site. And I'm just going to position my window so everyone can see. And it's just different things. So in this case, this is about hiring. Maybe we're trying to hire new sales reps. So let me just go ahead and actually put this under our October sales meeting. And there's an interesting article on, are we ready to adapt to this new generation of salespeople? So I've looked at this article, or I don't have time to read this article. So all I have to do is drag and drop it in my brain. And now that's available as well. And the nice thing about the brain is it enables me to kind of put things away. So I may not have time right at this second to read everything that I'm finding, all this great research on Generation Z, but the brain enables me to return to my information at any time. So and I always know where to find it because it's organized in a way that makes sense to me. And speaking of organization categories, if I have something that I haven't read yet, I actually have a very interesting thought called, let me just activate that thought, I need to read. And I actually love this thought. This thought is just stuff that, and we're going to talk a little bit about focused data input, and that is when I'm specifically looking for something like I did the Gen Z search. I know exactly where I want it in the brain. Great, drag and drop it. Well, there's also times where you just stumble upon just a really cool article, on the web, or your friend tells you about a new retail shop, but you may not exactly have the best place that you know where to put it. So what you can do is create buckets, or what we're actually going to show you in the Brain 10 beta, which Matt will cover, is we actually have a brain box as well. So this way you're just getting the information in your brain. And this is where I also like to tell new users and people with a lot of data, sometimes they can get very caught up in, well, I don't know where to put it. How do I organize it? It can go, where should it go? Which in fact, the cool thing about the brain is information can go under multiple categories, as you'll see, because I'm just going to go ahead and add this article to as I can read. So now I've got a connection to this article, and it's for my sales meeting, of course, but I'm also putting it under need to read. So on Saturday, when I have more time, Saturday morning, I open my need to read thought in my brain, and this is all kind of my stuff that might be personal, health news, it might be business related, but I just go in there. And the interesting thing about these thoughts too is they don't necessarily have to be permanent. Most people do like to keep the knowledge base growing and expanding, but if for some reason this website in Australia, I've kind of decided I've read it. It's not that meaningful. No problem. I can forget. So I can also change things, or news items. I mean, this is a pretty old item on Apple. I'm going to forget that as well. So these need to read research categories, areas that you're putting in your brain, they don't and they should not remain static. These are areas that stuff can be forgotten or deleted. It can be relinked, new stuff's coming in, old stuff's going out. This is going to be as dynamic as you need it to be. And you can see how easy it is to forget something. No, I'm not worried about Mercury anymore. I've sort of covered that. So again, in this case, I'm simply going to forget that. But now I am thinking about Generation Z. So, I've got that article. Now, the other way to do this, of course, is to tag information. So what I'm doing is I'm actually adding to thoughts in my brain, but there are many ways to organize information. So let me just go back to our 2018 October sales meeting that I'm preparing for. So what I've done is I've actually created a new thoughts, added some web content, as well as some documents in the brain. And the other thing that I do want to show you that's really cool, though, is our web previews. So this is really important too. If I just wanted to create a completely separate brain on Generation Z or this particular brain, and we can show you how to do this in the Q&A, I can copy and paste this and make it an executive briefing brain and then just publish it to the web. But I get a nice content preview of my document. So let me just go ahead and drag another PDF here. There's the growth of different branding. We're looking at sports brand, and then there's a white paper on Gen Z that I also have. And of course, I can drag and drop these from folders. I just have them sitting here on my website to make it very easy. So I've just dragged and dropped a few more pieces of information. Now, this is really nice, especially if you're sharing knowledge. I can actually look at this white paper here on, what we do for Generation Z, but I also see related context, and I can see that this is related to our October sales meeting. So this is about knowledge in a nice context. So when I do have time to look at that file, it is in its relevant place. And of course, this particular brain, if I wanted to go ahead and look at this online, I could do it. I could look at this on my phone as well. Now, other strategies for information is tagging content. So let's say I need to work a little bit more on this business plan for my meeting. I actually can go ahead and add a particular tag. So this might be a critical writing project for me. So I can go ahead and link the business plan to critical writing projects, or just add that as a tag. The other way to do it real quick is just to click on, now it's got, this is the tags list here, or I can give it a thought type. But tags are another way to slice and dice your data for really easy accessibility. So if I add something really quick in my brain and I want to just have it there for later, I can create tags. So some of the tags that I really like are 6 months time frame. I have different costing tags. So if I get budget for projects in my brain, I can all of a sudden click on everything that I've tagged as high investment, which is, of course, I was thinking about doing an expansion in China, opening a new office in Asia, and now I can go ahead and actually do that because, I've got funding. But anyway, I can get to that really quickly because I've set a tag for that. So now maybe this business expansion also becomes part of my October 2018 sales meeting. So I'm going to make a connection there. So this is an example of just creating spaces in your brain for adding content. The other thing that you can do is you can have a sort of brainstorming session, or what I call a new idea zone for, I'll just call this year end. And then I'll actually label this 2018 because these brains become quite dated. So I've just created this new idea zone for all my sales reps to come and add for 2018. I'm going to do a couple things. First of all, I'm going to click on this icon, and I'm going to select an icon here, and I'm going to go into objects, and I'm looking for a light bulb here. Grab a light bulb. And so now I've got this area, and I'm going to create a note. We need to think outside the box to capture new markets. So here's sort of a little inspiration. And now in this area, I'm going to actually leave blank, and I'm going to create a pin right here at the top of my brain. So now I might be off. Maybe a client calls me. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in Red Cross. And I'm working on Red Cross now in this section of my brain, moving really quickly. But all of a sudden I have an idea, a new idea for 2010 about more effective client management. So now I can simply click on this thought. And now a couple things. You can actually jot down ideas as notes. I think better client relationships would help, this kind of thing, and make a note. Or this could be a whole new thought on, more effective client management as your idea. And then from there, if you want it as a thought, you can, of course, start to do research or aggregate more information. So more effective client management. Well, here we go again. I'm just going to go ahead and hit F4 and search the web on different ideas for that. And different articles will pop up. It's so great, all this information. So here's a nice article. And again, I'm just going to drag and drop that. Actually, maybe I don't want this article in. Let me go to this article here on small business trends. But again, simply dragging and dropping that link into the brain. And then I just storing that information. And the other thing that I can do too is each thought, if I know the URL, I can actually, when the thought is active, I can click on the plus sign here, and I can also link this way. So if I want to link to a specific folder, or enter a URL, or open a folder, or add a template, or even just create a new document on this, maybe I want to start writing a white paper on effective client management, I can launch that in the brain as well and come in here and work. And in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and save this and pretend I've done all kinds of wonderful things in Microsoft Publisher. And you can see now I've got a document that I'm working on in Publisher. I've got a web link, and this section is going to start to get filled up pretty quickly. So just another example of how you can create these spaces in your brain. There's a couple other areas that I want to show you before I pass presenter to Matt. And if I go to my GTD section in my brain, I've got all kinds of things in GTD, from collect, process, and analyze. So those of you who are familiar with getting things done, you have various horizons of focus. So as you're adding information, you can also categorize stuff based on, active projects. So I've got all my active projects here. But what David Allen suggests is different areas of responsibility based on altitudes. So runway is just sort of basic level. We haven't gotten off the ground, but these are my real important action items. So I've got a thought for action items there. 10,000 foot view is your active projects. This is the area that you probably spend the most time in. And then 20,000 foot is areas of responsibility. So maybe my area of responsibility, although there's no immediate action item, is client management. So I want to come in here and link that article on client management, or that idea that I have, and I can just kind of go through these examples. And there's that article on 7 strategies for better client management, and I'll put that there. So when I'm thinking about my areas of responsibility, this particular article that I just found is again, it's right where I need it. So I don't have to decide if I want to have this just under the meeting or in client management. I can actually create multiple spots for this. In fact, if I go back up to the top of my brain, and I've got a section here for clients, it's actually going to make sense to have that as a jump thought. So I can just start typing in the first couple letters of that thought, 7, and just typed in 7, actually, 7 strategies for better client management, and make that connection. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and link that right there at the top next to client. So this one article is referenced in several different ways in my brain. So I'll always find it when I need it. But the other thing about that, the reverse of that, is I can put it away. I don't have to worry. I don't have to feel like I need to read it or digest it right away. I also have a thought in my brain on a personal level: kitchen renovation. I've gotten phone numbers. This is where all my stuff goes related to renovation. If I see a cool design, I love to use the zoomable icons. I've got stuff put away here as well. And again, this can be accessed. I can access this on my phone, online, but the information is there where I need it. And now, just to give you an example of the opposite of not using client software, I'm opening Jerry's Brain right now. And what Jerry's Brain has is it's completely online. You can go to jerrysbrain.com. It's actually probably right now on record as one of the largest brains ever created by a single human, and he has shared it. And what I did is I actually just typed in Paris and went to different retailers. And there's a retailer that I really like called Colette in Paris. And it's all this stuff about, trendy stores and things like that. But one of the great things about a brain, as far as situational awareness, is I'm actually just in his brain. And if I just want to type in the first couple letters of another city, maybe I'll just do New York. It's going to actually find everything. And let me just do New York Central, for instance. Everything going on in this case, he's got some stuff on U.S. railroads and railroads around the world. So this particular brain gives you an example of how, when I'm searching for something, I'm not just going to get a basic search. I'm going to get all the information surrounding that search. So I'm constantly getting, more content. And this is an online example for you guys to have fun. He's got everything from his own event schedules to just everything he's doing in 2018, and it's online. He also has an app if you want this particular brain as an app, but there's all kinds of interesting stuff here. But I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass presenter over to Matt, and Matt's going to preview even a few more excellent features to getting your information in quickly and fast in the brain.
That's right. Thanks. So while I'm taking presenter of the screen, I'll share with you a great question came in from Kirby talking about, is the brain more of your index, your card catalog, or is it the actual library? And it can be both very, very easily. Let me share my proper screen. And I'm going to open up my brain and share with you just really quickly before I get into some really exciting features of version 10 of the brain. There's many options for bringing data into the brain application. You saw Shelly bringing web content in. A lot of her thoughts have notes. You see notes on mine, so you can always copy and paste text into notes. And drag and drop files into the brain, where you can also go into your options and into preferences. And forgive me if I'm showing this again, if Shelly already demoed this while I was on the QA panel answering some questions coming in. But it'll either be called the UI tab or the behavior tab, but there is an option where you can preface how you want the brain to behave when you drag and drop a file into the brain. Are you moving it in from its original location so it's in the brain's internal database? Or are you just copying it in or making a link because it's on a shared drive and other people have access and are updating that file? So just a link to that ever-changing document is what you want in the brain. These are your choices, and you can set up the brain, the digital brain, to work best for your environment. So I'm going to share with you now some additional features, and these are features in the Brain 10. So the Brain 10 is currently in beta. We'll be sending everyone that joined the call today a link so that you can read more about all the new features. I won't have time to give you a complete demonstration of the Brain 10 features. But today I'll share with you just an individual feature in the Brain 10 beta that's allowing users yet again another choice, an option for you to get content into the brain. We talk about ideas coming so quickly and rapidly in today's environment, whether you're browsing the news on the web or looking through some files or you've been emailed some data. You can be caught off guard, and there's something that you need to archive, you need to preserve really quickly. And the Brain 10 provides you what we call the Brainbox. And the Brainbox is basically a storage center for all of your uncategorized data. In other words, I need to preserve this information. It's a document I want to read, or I have to have with me, but I don't have a placeholder yet for it in the brain, or I don't even have the brain open right now. And yet I need to save this file, and I'll come back into the brain and categorize it at a later date. So there's a few ways to get into the Brainbox from the Brain application. First off, when you log into the Brain, you are presented with a list of all your available brains that you've created. Whether you only have one brain or you've created dozens, you've got thumbnails for all available brains. And now with version 10, we have our Brainbox. Now you can see I already have some documents that have been moved into my Brainbox that I've not yet stored in the appropriate brain database or the appropriate location of my main brain that I use. And so I can open up my Brainbox, preview my data. I can delete it if I find that I'm no longer using it, or edit that particular file name, rename it, etc. You can see I'm previewing a web page that I added into my brain that I want to archive, but I haven't yet found a home for this particular, in this case, website quite yet. Also, when you're navigating through the brain, notice I've got a little Brainbox icon. So let's say I come down into New Thought. One of my clients, we've got a new ad campaign that we're putting together. It's called See the World. So I've created a thought called See the World. This is going to be an ad campaign. So I'm going to give this a thought type. It's a current open ad campaign that we're working on. So, or it's an active project is what I typically call them. So there's my thought type active project. Another little highlight of the Brain 10, I can actually visualize the thought types in the structure of the brain itself. So there I've categorized this as a current active project. The data for this active project is all over the map. I'm going to be receiving emails. I'm going to be doing research online. I've got existing files, etc., that are going to go into this area of my brain. Now, if I already have one in my Brainbox, I can click, and there, sure enough, I've got a data import that I'm going to be using. So I'll drop that under the category of See the World. So with this file in my Brainbox, I've got the option to create a new child thought with this file as an attachment, or I can link to the current thought that I'm actually on. I can also open it, preview it, make sure that's what I'm looking for, and do some other features. So for now, I just want to create a child thought with my data import. So data import is no longer in my Brainbox, and I've found a home for that content, for that data, creating a new thought underneath my ad campaign for this client. So let's bring some more information into my Brainbox. I'm going to start off, since I'm talking about files and documents, I'm going to start off by opening a directory I have with some existing data that, once again, let's say I don't even have the Brain open. I'll close the Brain, and here I am with my, my documents that I'm reviewing, and I realize my presentation script, this is a presentation that I'm putting together for that client that I'm working on, the See the World ad campaign. So I'm going to right-click on this Word document and select to send to Brainbox. So when you install version 10, from the download page, there's information about the Brainbox, and there's as soon as you install version 10, this feature will exist for you. So all files and documents as you're navigating through Windows, or on Mac, on a Mac OS machine, you actually take a file and drag it down to the Brain icon in the dock. So it's a little bit different on Mac with version 10 installed. If version 10 is running, simply drag that icon down onto the dock. And with version 10 on Windows, I right-click and select Brainbox. So presentation script, let's bring my Brain back. You can see it's almost instant. There was a little message, maybe you missed it, but that presentation script has been added into my inbox almost instantaneously. So then once again, I go into my Brain, I find a place or a home for this data. I can actually very easily add that particular file. So it's a really simple process for existing files. Let's go ahead and open a few browsers. There's different systems or different processes, I should say, for different browsers. And once again, the instructions for how to install, whether it's the bookmarklet feature, or here you can see I've got a little icon appearing in my, menu bar of my browser. In this case, it's Chrome. And so I've got my icon. So as soon as I find a page I like, this page is very interactive. I think this page would be a good example of something that we want to do for our client, for their ad campaign. So let's preserve this. I want to review this later and see if this is something that my company can develop for my client. So I'm simply going to click and add that to my Brainbox. So that web page added to my Brainbox very quickly. I mentioned there's a few different processes. So let's open up just a few different browsers. And once again, I've got another web page. I really like the scrolling on this web page. I really like how the images are changing and updating. So I'm going to preserve this web page in my Brainbox as well. And so click and add that to the Brainbox. So you can see it goes very, very quickly. And with Chrome and Firefox, very simple process. Also a simple process from Opera and Safari. I'm not on Mac, obviously, but Brainbox can be installed there as well. And finally, Edge. It's a little bit different with Microsoft Edge. If you're using Edge, you'll first need to create a bookmark. And you can bookmark any page you want. So I've got in my bookmark bar, you simply click on the star, you add a new bookmark, and then you go back and edit that bookmark. And the instructions, once again, on that whole process are on the Brainbox page on our website, which I'll share with you here in just a moment. But I've added that item in my bookmark bar in Microsoft Edge. So once again, I'm just going to navigate to a site that I like. It's not the food that I like, it's the really big, bold graphics and how they appear as I scroll. My client might like that as well. So with this page open, simply click on that item. And once again, the little box pops up and lets me know that that particular page has been added into my Brainbox. So I've added some files, I've added some web pages, And I'm going to return back to the brain. And I'm going to start now talking about the sync process, because the sync process with the Brainbox is very, very important. And I'll share with you why in just a moment. You can see my auto sync is kicking off there in the background. And as that sync takes place, I'm going to open up and notice in my Brainbox, the presentation script, there you just saw it happen. The presentation script was the last item that was appearing, being added into the Brainbox. Now this home page for, I think this was the SOAP website, here's the KLM website, and as soon as this sync is done, it'll add that last web page that I just recently added. Once again, all now preserved in my Brainbox, so when I find the right location, and for these web pages, I'm even going to create a new web design research. So a new child thought, and this is where I'll go over to my Brainbox and add these as child thoughts down below. So really quickly just add those web pages so that I have access to them from this new area of my brain. Now, that sync, it's still going on in the background. What the sync is doing is actually taking this particular brain that is running locally here on my machine and syncing it up to the Brain cloud. So you can log into the Brain cloud from our website. Let me open up my browser. So I like to use Chrome, and here I am at the Brain and at our website. Click on the login button in the upper right-hand corner and log into your Brain account page. So these are all the brains that I have synced and now have access to online. So I can open this particular brain online. If I go down to, I'm in a brain called eSolutions Consulting. So there it is. So I'll click and launch and open this particular brain online. Everything that I've added into my Brainbox and then added to thoughts on the actual structure of my brain is now accessible anywhere this brain travels. So it's going to be, I can open this from the web or even from my mobile devices, which I'll get to in just a moment as well. So there are many advantages to syncing your brain to the cloud, not only for online access. So here I am online. I can go to my Instant Dynamics Corp and navigate down to all of the content and ad campaigns. As you can see that I've added, I'll go back to the brain and kick off another sync to make sure I get all those most recent changes available to me online. And so that sync will take just a moment, and I'll refresh here and have access to all the new thoughts that I've created, all of the data, and be able to navigate to that content online. But as I mentioned, I'll also be able to navigate to this information on my mobile devices. So I'm going to share a little feature with you now. And forgive me, this takes just a moment to broadcast my phone. As you can see, I'm logging in to my phone. Broadcast this onto the screen. So stand by 1 second and you will see, there we go. Great, so here is my phone. It is my personal phone, so please forgive any wacky wallpaper or anything like that you may see. But, oh, let me log in properly. There we go. And
looks
so I'm going to
good.
log in. I'm going to log in now. So you can see everything that I'm seeing here on my end. Where's my camera? There it is. Everything that I'm seeing here on my phone is now being projected onto the screen. So I'm going to launch the brain. And let me get to my brain list. And I'm going to open up. If I just scroll through, there's the brain that I was in today, my eSolutions Consulting brain. And I'll open up my pins and, oops, clicked on the wrong thought. There you can see the sync at the very bottom is kicking off. So in just a moment, it'll be up to date. And I can navigate down into my clients and prospective clients, or no, renewal, here we go, up for renewal is Instant Dynamics Corporation. There's that see the world thought that I just created earlier today. There's all of my web design research, so I can access that data. And as I mentioned earlier, the Brain 10 is in beta production. Right now, the way the way the Brainbox works is you can use the Brainbox on your desktop application and grab information that you find on the web, your individual files, as you've seen me demonstrate. on the iOS and Android app, which you can download from the App Store, from Google Play, that version has what we call the Inbox. The Inbox will soon be receiving an update. It will be called the Brainbox, and will be in sync with everything that you're dropping into your Brainbox from your desktop machine. As it stands right now, everything on my phone going into the inbox, it's sort of a separate inbox from the desktop Brainbox. So just be aware of that, that right now they're not in sync, but they will be in a very, very upcoming release, very quickly upcoming, I should say. So let's go ahead and add some content here on my phone. Once again, I could have the Brain app not even open. I'll be browsing the web, so I open up Safari, and I find a web page that I like. So I'm going to click on the share icon. So I tapped on share, the very bottom, the little square. I can't highlight, oh, here, I can highlight it with this. So the little square that you see at the very bottom with the arrow pointing up, that's the share. Tap on share, and notice in your list, we can add to the Brain. So once you, and again, there's no setup necessary. As soon as you install the Brain for iOS or for Android, that share option will be there. So I'm going to add that particular web page, dwell.com. I've added that into my Brain. And this works from apps as well. Not every single app on the phone, but many of them, or maybe even say most of them. If there's files, documents that you can create and save from that app, then it can be shared with the Brain. So even images, let me browse over to my images. So this might be goofy as well. But here we go. We've got a little picture of, maybe it's an invoice or a product that you're researching and you're interested in. So there I've taken a picture of a woodworking product, and maybe I'm going to be using this as a reference in my upcoming presentation for my client. So let's share that image. And again, I scroll down through the bottom. I'll add that to the Brain as well. And just to be completely random, I'm going to open up another app, like I mentioned. I've got a little app here, the Tom Hanks app, typewriter app. So it's sort of like having an old-fashioned typewriter right here on your iPhone, kind of fun to use. And now I'm going to click on the little hamburger button, and we'll share this document. Where are we going to share it to? We're going to add it into the Brain. So the item is right there from a totally separate app that we are completely unrelated to as well. So if you can save files and documents in apps from your iOS or Android device, you can share them into your Brain. Let's return back to the Brain now. And let's say I've got a new thought here. I'm not going to do this on the desktop. I'm going to do this all from my phone. So under See the World, I'm going to add a new child thought called research. And I'll create that new child thought. Again, all doing this from the phone. Oh, you can see, as you can on my desktop. So I've created my child thought called research, and now I'll tap on the paperclip icon. And notice at the very bottom, there's a little 4. And that 4 is telling me there are 4 items in my Brain's inbox. I'll tap. There are my 4 items. There's the image that I did, another file that I added later. My untitled PDF, that is the document that came in from the Hanks writer, and my dwell.com website. So let's add that PDF. I'll go ahead and attach that. So it removes it from the list, attaches the PDF to this thought, to that research thought under See the World. So I'm going to put the phone down now and return back to my desktop. There we go. Move that to the side. I'll return all the way back to my desktop, and I'll even move my, this is the online version of my Brain. And let's cancel that. There we go. Return to my desktop. There we go. And do a sync. So back in the Brain 10, I'm syncing my Brain. I've made changes from my mobile device. And returning to my mobile device, make sure I clicked on the sync button. And there I have. So the mobile device is now synced. And back in the Brain, sync kicks off. And there's my research. So I've added that new PDF document that you saw me working on. There it is, the PDF document that was created in an app on my iPhone. Information on the go. I needed to preserve that. I'm going to be using this for research for this upcoming See the World ad campaign, and now I've got it in my brain. And it goes with me wherever the brain goes. I sync my brain to the cloud. I've got online access, sync my brain between multiple devices. Wherever I have my brain installed and I can log in, I'll have access to all of my internal documents that I've associated with thoughts in the brain. And Shelley, with that, I think those are, of course, I could spend the next half hour to an hour demoing and premiering all kinds of wonderful features of the Brain 10. But the Brainbox is really something that I wanted to show off today. It's very poignant to today's topic of information on the go. So with that, I think we have time for some questions from the QA panel.
Great. Yeah, and we do have a number of questions, so I think that will be great. And real quick, I guess I'll get back to some of the earlier questions, and we do have a lot, but Steve just wrote in real quick. I assume you have screen capture, so maybe going back to the desktop app, and a lot of people saw some of those zoomable icons I use for our customers, as well as my kitchen reno. If you could show getting back to how to capture items from your screen, which is another data capture tool and great. And then a lot of questions on notes as well, and I'll cover that. So we'll go back to just doing some idea and data capture with screen capture and notes.
Sure. So getting back to the screen capture, and I did see those questions about adding images into your brain. So this is very relevant. In some scenarios, it's not necessarily the web page that we're interested in. It's just an image on the web page or a piece of the content. So here's a web page that I added. This is that KLM web page that I added into my brain earlier. And I don't need the entire website with all these scrolling features and things like that. I really just love the background, and maybe I want to utilize or play with this background, again, for my presentation for my client. So let's go into web design research, and I'll create a new thought under KLM called backgrounds. And once again, see, I don't need the entire web page loading up in the content window. I just want a really nice capture of that wallpaper, that image that's on the website. So with that image open in the background from the brain, I'm actually going to, there's a couple of different ways to get to this. I typically right click and select to capture image. Now that I've selected capture image, notice the brain has minimized, not on the screen. I can hit tab if I want to capture an image of the brain application, but in this case, I want what's behind it. So the brain automatically minimized, and you can see hopefully that I have these crosshairs, very thin red lines, some crosshairs, and I simply drag corner to corner of where I want that image. So let's get a little bit of the clouds and these great colors. I click and drag, and that image has been added as a zoomable icon into the brain. So now for this background thought, I can hover over and see that image scale in the brain. And if I make the brain window even a little bit larger, that image will scale a little bit larger. So it'll scale to the maximum possible size. And that's about the size of the image itself that I took. So very, very easy way to grab images. Of course, you can drag and drop graphic files. You can copy and paste them into your notes. But this is another really great way to grab that image capture very, very quickly and add it to a thought in your brain.
All right, great. And Kirby had a question earlier, and I'm sorry, some fire trucks are going by the Brain office right now, so hopefully we're not getting too much background noise. But I guess it was a question in my presentation earlier. I did a lot of online links, but her question was the example of being given to put information to Brain, links to info aren't actual information. How can we actually import data into the brain? And is it better to conceive of a brain as merely an index of links or a file repository? So to answer that question, Matt, and of course, or Kirby and Matt can demonstrate, it can be either or, especially for files. Now for web links, it is pointing to that web page. So in that case, yes, it's going to be a shortcut or link. But for files, you actually have the option. And when I was dragging and dropping those files, I was actually copying them into my brain as well. And we actually recommend that you do that, especially for sync, so you do get access to the files. So I'll let Matt cover a little bit about different file importing options as far as whether we're doing a link or
Sure.
storing that file internally. We can also import folders. There's lots of different options, and it really just depends what makes sense for you.
Absolutely. And as I showed you at the very, very beginning, with the brain open, I can click on options and go into my preferences. If you're on a Mac, you'll click on the brain preferences. And on version 9, it's called the UI tab. We've updated user interface. On version 10, we've updated that to call it the behavior tab. So I click on behavior, and there's that drop-down menu. How do you want the brain to behave when you drag and drop a file into the brain? Do you want to move it in, copy it in, or link it in? So you can set up the brain to work best for your unique environment. You can also use some keystrokes. I'm going to leave mine on copy. That's the default when you install the brain. It's set to copy files into the brain. I typically change mine to move, but I'll change mine to copy. So you can see once again, if I go down to see the world, and I'm going to grab this PowerPoint, I drag and drop. The original file is still there. I've brought a copy into the brain. I'm now going to use some keystrokes to override those defaults. If I hold down, I'm going to grab making choices, and I'm going to click on shift or press the shift key and drag and drop making choices into the brain. And you may notice that making choices is no longer there in the original directory. That's because the shift key will override whatever your setting is for drag and drop in the brain preferences, and it's going to move that file internally into the brain. Finally, here's the last option. I'm going to grab this marketing report, and this time I'll tap on Alt, tap. I'm getting iPhone mixed up with computer keyboards. I'm going to press on Alt and drag and drop market report. Let's look closely. That market report thought, there's a little black arrow icon that you can see there. And if I look very closely at the properties for that attachment over on the content tab, telling me that where that file actually resides. The Alt key, once again, it's overriding your default setting, and it's just linking to that original file. So let's say you've linked some files, you've moved some files. How do you keep track as your brain continues to grow? You can run a report. So I'm going to open up the reports in my brain and tell the brain, all right, show me all thoughts that have attachments that are internal. There are 60 thoughts that have internal attachments in this particular brain. There are, let's go to external, 38 thoughts with an external attachment. So now I can go back and review and find out, all right, if I sync this brain to the cloud, the shortcuts that I'm just linking to aren't going to go with the brain. I'm just preserving that path, the shortcut path to that file. What am I going to be missing once I go to visit this brain online? So I run a report, show me all thoughts with attachments, with shortcuts. All right, that's too many to review right now. I'm really just interested in all thoughts that are shortcuts that have been modified, we'll say, within the past month. There's just 2. I've got a consulting contract. So I can navigate over to there, consulting contract, and my market report. So just 2 shortcuts modified in the past month that are external attachments in this particular brain. Now that I've found that, I can even take that one step further, right click on a shortcut. I can move or copy that file into the brain. I can go to an internal attachment, right click and move or copy that file out of the brain. So once you get information into the brain, it's very easy to extract, to move it back out. It's very easy to rearrange or reassociate how those documents are linked to thoughts in your brain. You can always go back and modify your attachments, how they're being shared, saved, or accessed in the brain that you're creating.
All right, great. And we're coming on the hour. We have a couple more questions that I do want to cover in Q&A, but before, for those of you that do need to leave on the hour, yes, many questions. This will be recorded, so if you need to watch anything we've covered, there will be a recording published on our website. You will be emailed the recording. And for those of you that are just new and we didn't cover sort of building that brain from scratch or, just getting set up, we have the Brain 101 class tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Feel free to sign up for that. Advanced users, if you had, say, more questions on the Brainbox, you can even join in to the latter half, and it's a smaller class size, so I pretty much guarantee Matt will cover every single question to get in there. So if you kind of want to use that as even a little support session, feel free to do that. And that's you can sign up from that in our support area under free web training, and it's also linked off our homepage. Now, just going a bit further, Phil had a question on notes. So let's just talk, first of all, we kind of gave a lot of priority to data importing, but this is also about idea capture. And not only can we capture ideas as thoughts, but the notes are very powerful. We, in essence, in addition to being a visualization software, are a very powerful note-taking app. So we'll just cover a little bit of that, but I'll also bring up Phil's question that he had he asked could you discuss ways to keep notes in MS Word or other file types or just notes from calls and meetings and maintaining the sequence of time in these events? And I guess, Phil, I don't know, I don't want to take presenter back because we're kind of running short on time. In my case, happy to email you a screenshot. My meeting section actually did chronologically have each meeting based on time. And so the way you can do that is you can actually create a thought with the date on it. And then you actually have all the information surrounding that. And notes also has timestamps. So I'll let Matt's diving into notes, and we'll cover notes, and we'll cover it in sort of the context of your question. And Matt, I can repeat that question a little later on too, if you, once you've demoed the basic note stuff.
Great. So as you mentioned, like, how do you use notes like during a meeting, et cetera? I started typing into the notes as you were asking the question.
Here we go. So, it's amazing, yeah.
Just to try and give you an example of how Shelly and I both use the notes. We will be sitting in the meeting, and, if someone says, Matt, you need to take care of the following things. You need to talk to Phil to make sure his questions get answered. Okay, Phil, this is your time right now. We're going to take care of that. So what I've done is created a checkbox very quickly. So the notes are designed in the brain to be very simple, easy to use, and consistent in their layout. So when I jump from thought to thought throughout my brain, I don't have all kinds of just discombobulated pieces of information. The notes have a very clean, consistent layout. If you need things more advanced, like adding tables together and things that you would do typically in an Excel spreadsheet, I would recommend that you add an Excel spreadsheet as an attachment to that particular thought. Notes are just that. They're quick, easy to use, easy to read notes. So we've got some some basic fundamental components. Obviously, I can bold and color code things if that's what's important to me. So these need to be handled next. I'm going to make those appear in red. I've got a checklist. I use checklists quite a lot. So there's a little button, whether you want an unordered list, an ordered list, or create checklists. So I'm going to demo. I'm doing that now. Let's check that off. So I love the checklist. And then from time to time, what I'll do is just add sort of just a line separator. So there's my notes from today, and here's my notes for tomorrow or what have you. And I'll timestamp. So a timestamp, again, just a very simple button in the notes. I can add that timestamp so I know when that task took place or when that particular project was assigned to me. And I have notes, or I have thoughts, I should say, in my brain for every client that I work with, every individual person that I talk with on a regular basis, connected to the meetings that they've attended, et cetera. And during the meeting, I'll have the notes open for that particular meeting and keeping track of all those items that need to take place. Once that meeting is done, if I have incomplete tasks, that is the job of, for me, that's the job of a thought tag. So I'll tag that particular thought. I go down to tags. I'm not sure if I have incomplete. I don't see it here. So I'll create a new tag called incomplete. So I know that that is an incomplete task, and I can visit other notes or just click on the tag for incomplete and find all thoughts that have notes with incomplete tasks on them. And when everything gets checked off the list, let's go back to see the world. We've done our demo. No need to repeat. Everything is complete. I will modify this thought and remove the incomplete task, or maybe upgrade it to being completed or what have you. Change the actual tag if it's a process or a business process that I'm following. So a lot of really, really great features in the notes. I really highlight the notes quite extensively in my Brain 101. So if you do join Brain 101 tomorrow, I'll share with you even more features that I really like about the notes. But hopefully that addresses all of your questions.
Yeah, that was great. And then, of course, we have the calendar as well. So if you have action items that are due on a specific date, you can take it a step further and also set a reminder thought in your brain as well.
Absolutely. I'll do that really quick. Just create an event. So my brain will remind me, we'll say next week on the 8th. And what is the reminder? See the world, review, tasks with Phil and Shelly. So I'm just going to come back and review this thought, make sure everyone's happy. I will have the brain send me a reminder. We'll say an hour before 3 p.m. So an hour before 3 p.m., the brain will pop up with a little reminder that says, hey, it's time to review these tasks. So again, another feature that we really didn't get a chance to highlight today, but those reminders in the brain, incredibly helpful, particularly as your brain continues to age and this brain continues to age.
Yes.
You'll find those reminders very, very helpful.
And just another great reason to capture that data in the brain, because you can find it so easy, but you can also be reminded proactively as well. So I don't want you to think of the brain as just a static map. I can create a Word document. I can create a reminder. I can take a note. It is sort of your complete workspace in addition to idea capture. And then speaking of search, we had a question come in towards in the bottom of our Q&A about search. Hugh is asking, are shortcuts still indexed so I can search inside a linked attachment, or do they need to be internal to the brain?
It really depends on if you're using the Brain 9 or the Brain 10. In version 9, all of your thoughts, calendar items, so that reminder, all the details, the information in those different fields, that's all being indexed and shows up in your search results. Internal attachments, notes, all show up. External attachments were not being indexed, but that is one of the great new features of the Brain 10 is external attachments are now being indexed. So I know of one in this particular brain. You can see the last search I did in this brain is for the word power. So the brain will bring back all of the thought names, matches, all of your calendar items, and then here are notes and file attachments. And if I scroll down to the very bottom, it'll show me external matches as well. So power doesn't show up in external match, but if I do a search for the word terrace, and there you can see I just typed in T-E-R-R. So there's Terry, a few different thoughts on Terry, notes and attachments, scroll down to the very bottom, external file attachments, Terrace Consulting document, it's a shortcut on the consulting contract thought. So external attachments are being indexed in version 10. So that's another just exciting new feature of the application.
All right, and I think with that, there's a lot more questions. A lot of people are asking, is there a maximum capacity for items in the Brainbox? And I actually don't know. It's just in development. I don't think so, but that might be a question for Harlan Hugh. Are you familiar with that? Have people been asking that, or did you guys cover that?
It's
a very new feature, guys. So
it is very new, and I've been testing that, and I have put a lot of content into my Brainbox, and have had knock on wood, have had no problems yet. So very, very exciting new feature. No limitations at this time. We have stress tested as well with me just putting individual documents on. We're sort of building a massive Brainbox and it still works great. So, and again, as Shelley mentioned, it's still in development as well. So it's being updated daily. In fact, I know of changes and great new exciting updates that are just going into place this week. So no limitations in the Brainbox quite yet.
All right, great.
Yeah.
And I think that's we're 10 minutes over time, so we're going to end today's session. But I just want to remind everyone that for those of your questions that weren't covered, feel free to chat in. We have live agents all day from 8 a.m. Pacific till 5 p.m. Pacific time. So you can chat in on our website with sort of more specific questions. What have you mentioned? You're trying to kind of optimize your syncing to your mobile phone. And actually, somebody earlier mentioned, was interested how you got your iPhone on your computer. That was done through a simulator. So you can chat about that or email us about that as well. So there were some peripheral questions. But I think we've covered everything. Any other final words of wisdom or anything else, Matt, that you wanted to cover before we end our session today?
We're always available at support@thebrain.com. So we're happy to hear whatever questions you have, provide any assistance, even sample brains on specific topics. We can direct you to where we store those on our website, so you can actually download sample brains. So feel free at any time to contact us with further questions or join the Brain 101 tomorrow. And if you do, I will see you then.
All right, great. And with that, we wish you well in creating your ever expanding and very mobile knowledge base. And go ahead and take that information on the go. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.